Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, I'm going to talk about grading faces in DaVinci Resolve and have your footage go from this to this. In case this is your first time here, I'm Fred Trevino. I've been a professional colorist for over 10 years. I've graded about 60 feature-length films and hundreds of short-form projects for companies like Under Armour, ESPN, HBO, just to name a few. In this video, I'm going to talk about something that isn't talked about much, and that is grading faces and making them look as good as possible. Also, if you're new here, this channel focuses mainly on the creative side of color grading. There's a ton of great channels out there that focus on all the technical stuff, but here I like to focus on purely the creative side. So with that being said, let's jump right in.
This intro intentionally left blank.
Okay, so here is where we started. So let's jump right in. The first thing I did to this clip here is, as I typically do, is just a base grade. You can see that initially, or at least, how I looked at it, her face was way too bright, a little bit. She wasn't overexposed, but you can tell that she has very light skin. She's redhead, blue eyes, just has very light skin, and that kind of skin tone is very easy to overexpose, blow out, and it just looks very bright. Okay, so the adjustment was just, a very simple overall exposure adjustment here in the HDR tools. And then after that, it was just simply a very small contrast boost. Overall, this was well shot. There's just a few things that, need to happen to really make it look good. So this base adjustment basically just went from here to here. So let's blow that up. Again, before, check out mainly her skin tones to that. So now we can see a little bit more detail. We can see that she actually has freckles. Before you couldn't see any of that. And then with the contrast, that's something I really wanted to see. The texture in her skin, her freckles really show what her skin looks like. And again, it was before, after. And then for this next one, we'll kind of show you a little bit of the benefit of having the full version of DaVinci Resolve. This is the OFX plugin called Face Refinement. And what's very cool about this is that as soon as you analyze it, it actually, as it's called, it analyzes the face, the lips, the eyes, the cheekbones, the forehead, everything like that. And so let me just show you what I did here. And this one you definitely have to see in full screen. So before, after, before, after. And let me just kind of dial in and let you know what I actually did. Really what I did here is I adjusted the midtones in the skin tones. Okay, so if I reset this, you can see, again, that was the before for midtones and face refinement, and then after, before, after. Again, just trying to get as much detail into her skin tone. And then from here, I went down, I did eye retouching. You can see there's a lot of really awesome things. This is one I use a lot. I didn't use it here, but it's great shine removal. We've all had situations where you shoot something, the person, maybe it's an interview, they start sweating, they start getting very shiny, and this will help reduce that. And then one thing I also use a lot is for eye retouching, I did sharpening. Okay, this might be a little hard to see over the compression of YouTube, but if you look at the eyes, before, after, before, after. You may not be able to see too much on YouTube, but it is one of those things where sharpening the eyes always just helps draw attention to the face and really helps make things look really great. And this is something that can also be helpful if sometimes the eyes are slightly out of focus. So I did that. Lip retouching. This one might be easier because she had, not too much color in her lips. Before, after, before, after. Okay, and then blush retouching. I don't think I did anything for blush, but I did do, I skipped her forehead. I did do her cheeks here. And again, it was just wanting to have more color in her skin, just because she is very light skinned. So this is the before, after, You can specifically see it more in this left cheek here. Before, after, before, after, and with all of them combined, before, after. So again, sharpen the eyes, gave her basically more lip color, increased more color in her cheeks, a little bit more skin tone, brought down her skins even more, and then also boosted the contrast just in her skin tone to see her freckles a little bit more. And there you go, before, after. And now this is a tool that typically just blows people away the first time you show it to them. But for those of you who think this is going to be the majority of the look and it's kind of a cheat code and this does all the work for you, I promise you by the end of this video, this is going to be one of the smaller things that are done to it. It is a great tool. It helps save time, but anything you do here, you can do manually. And honestly, manually is usually do get better results, as amazing as this is. So yeah, just wanted to say that, this thing is a great tool, but doesn't do as much work as you would think it does. Okay, so next one, I actually wanted again to bring out the blue in her eyes, which was a little bit on the easier side. And I did that by going here, except what I did differently here is I actually did the 3D keyer. Okay. And if I zoom into the eye here, and you can see similar to the Magic Mask tool, you kind of make these streaks here. So I did the blue to select, what shade of blue I wanted to pick out. And that's what it selected. And then I did the red to remove a little bit out of the whites of her eyes. And let me zoom out to that. So you can see, great tool for keying. I mean, I literally just selected her eyes, and then really, I mean, there's no harm in affecting the other blues in the image as well. So it selected this, because the point is, I just wanted to add a little bit of color contrast to it, boost the blues a little bit, in particular her eye. So if we go here, again, something that you may not be able to see, before, after, before, after. It's more noticeable on my display, of course, but I know through the compression, you may not be able to see it. And let me show you where we are. So again, this is where we started. You can now see in hindsight how bright this was. Some of you may have noticed, some of you may have not noticed, but we went first look, face refinement, eyes. And so at this point, this is a good, base grade. And this is where you kind of get into, okay, this looks good. Now let's start applying a grade. What I initially did, it's not exactly color correction, but it's just kind of getting this to a place that looks good. And then I decided to apply a dark look to it. So a little bit about my workflow. When I'm working on pieces, especially commercial pieces, people like options. I find clients either know exactly what they want down to the color of the pupils, or they just are like, hey, we hired you for a reason. Here's a little bit of inspiration, do your thing, and show us a few options. So what I like to do is I use versions to give them options. And here I created a dark look and a bright look. First, I'll jump into the dark look. So this is kind of the base grade. And then this is a compound node, which is basically a grouping of 3 nodes. So if I were to select all 3 of these, for example, right clicked, and if I went to create compound node, it would just simply put those 3 nodes into one node. It's that simple. So let me show you what the dark look is, and I'll let you get a little bit used to it, because a little bit about color theory is people get anchored into the initial look and they typically like the first look. And so I bet that for most of you, when I switched over to this look, you were like, wow, initially I don't like that, or it's too blue, or it's too dark, or it's too this. And you really just need a little bit of time to get used to it. And that's what one of the more important things about color grading is, and being a colorist, is training yourself, training your eyes, not to have too much bias, and to learn to walk away from a grade, come back and look at it with fresh eyes so that you can see what actually is working and what is not working. Okay, so here it is. This is the dark look. I bet it looks a little bit nicer to most of you now. Okay, and if I go into here and right click and then just say show compound node, it'll show you what I did. And so I'm going to turn these off again. Boom, this is where we were. Okay, and I bet now you don't like this look. That's just how the brain works and how color works. So what I did here for my dark look is I used the curves and I said, you know what? I really want this to be, bring everything down. So I literally just clicked on her skin on the curves and you can see that this is where her skin is. And I just brought it down a little bit. Boom, to this. Okay, just brought her skin down even more to that, to a more, you could say, kind of film-like luminance level, whereas this is more of a commercial, brighter level. Okay, and then again, I went down to temperature and cooled it off, just so it has a darker, moodier look. And that was as simple as temperature, bringing down the temperature, adding a little bit of blue to it, cooling it down. And then I went into the curves again and I wanted to add blue just to the blacks, the shadows, the very dark spots here. And so I went into the curves again. I actually unlinked that, turned on just the blues. And if I expand this, you can see that I then clicked, you can actually click on, say, the shadows here. And because it's the same, it will then select where you want to click. So for example, if I click here, you can see it selected that point there. And then I raised just the blacks there. Before, there we go. Then here we go, before, after, before, after. You can see it mainly on this side here. Before, after, but all of that stuff combined, before, after, kind of helps create that kind of darker look. And so there we go. That's the darker look. And now moving on to the brighter look, here's what I did. I then create a second version, okay? And that's as easy as right-clicking, going into versions here, and then going into create new version, and that's what I did. And I created one called happy version, so I could load it here if I wanted to. It's called happy look, or the keyboard shortcut is Command B. And now that you've gotten used to this, let me show you the happy look, which initially will probably be jolting and too much. Here's the happy look, okay? And by the way, what you are probably experiencing right now is probably the worst things that well, not the worst things they can experience, but what you're experiencing right now is one of the most common things that filmmakers experience that hurts their movie, is that they get so used to their usual grade or the initial LUT that they applied that whenever they work with a colorist and a colorist starts changing things and doing this, doing stuff like that, they just like cannot adapt to that. And they end up, by the end of it, believe it or not, saying, you know what, I like this look. Can you just make it look more like this one? Because I'm so used to this look. And I've had more films than you would think, surprisingly, where they end up, being, I mean, honestly, they just kind of freak out when you change something too much. And they end up saying, you know what, I think this is way too much. I'm used to this. Let's keep it that way. And this is, they may not do this exactly, but they end up only making minor changes like that. And then they're happy with that. So that's just something, a tip I can give you is if you grade something yourself or if you work with a colorist, especially if you don't have much experience with color grading, don't trust your eyes when you see something for the first time. Let yourself get used to it, walk away, come back and look at it before you say something does not look good or before you say something does look good. So this is the happy look, okay? Now that I've gotten you used to it a little bit, this is the happier look. And this is happy look removed, or the base, the initial grade that we did. Okay, and here's the happier look. And okay, and let me show you what I did with that one. Same thing. I created a small node tree here into a compound node. Now I'm going to go into show compound node again. Similar node tree here. I'll turn all these off. Similar thing with the curves. I clicked on her skin, except this time I brought her down just a tiny bit. such a little amount before, after, before, after, almost unnoticeable, honestly. But I think it does make a slight difference. And again, I went with temperature next. And this time I went with this for the happier look, before, after. And that was simply by pushing mainly the tint. I wanted to go in a more pink magenta direction, and then a touch of warmth, okay? And that's what took us from here to here, okay? And then soft shadows, again, for a happier look. I didn't want it to be so menacing with all of this black here. So I simply curves, this time around, were something that I used pretty regularly. And I simply did low soft. I just crank that up. And what low soft does is it takes the shadows, the darkest parts of your image, and raises them up. But LS for soft means that it does a very soft kind of organic film-like curve. So it's not just, so basically, so it's more pleasing to the eye. And so if I go up, before, after, you can see it all out here. It just gives it this more kind of prettier matte look to the shadows in the overall image. Before, after, and there you go. Now let yourself get used to this look. That's the happy look. And then if I turn off the happy look, there we go. Here's without it. Here's with it. And again, no tree. When I say I turn off this look here, it's turning off the last one here that's kind of the look, but it's keeping all of this stuff on, the initial stuff. And so I turn it on, off, and now let me kind of screw with your eyes even more. I'm going to toggle between the dark look and the happy look. And if you want, comment below which one you like better. There's the dark look. Probably looks not great to you right now because you're so used to the other one. Here's the happier look. I'm willing to guess that most people will like this look, because another thing about color psychology, I guess is a better word, is that people tend to always pick the brighter image and the more saturated image. If something's brighter, people will tend to choose it. If something's more saturated, people will tend to choose it. And if something's warmer, people will tend to choose it, which explains why when you go to a store like a Best Buy, they have the saturation, the brightness, everything cranked up to 100%, because people will look at those TVs, like them, and say, oh, that's a great looking TV. So here's the happy look, darker look. And I'm going to hold on it a little bit just to let your eyes get used to it. This is the dark look, happy look. Okay, and I am going to now actually try something. Split. There's both looks next to each other. Check them out. Which one do you like better? And it's really, this kind of thing, it comes down to not which one do you like better, because like I said, I bet most people will pick this. If you think of the project, the film, whatever, for a beauty commercial look, most of the time a client will ask for this one here. Every now and then they'll ask for that one there. But the general audience, if you're just watching this wherever, like on TV or on the web, if this is the only thing you've seen, this will not look too blue, too cool, or anything like that. The only reason this looks cool, the only reason it looks blue, more muted, is because you saw the other one that's warmer and happier. But if I were just to like see a commercial and play through this, this looks just like an ad you would see where everything's just kind of stylized. And let me switch over to the other one. Okay, so there you go. This was kind of a little bit of a lesson in not only grading faces, but also just kind of color psychology, color theory. And yeah, so there you go. Okay, that's it. I'm sure you learned a lot. We covered a lot, everything from color psychology to grading faces to a little bit about my process. Check out my other videos too. Like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all later.